Shana Tova. I'm Rabbi Burke. I'm the other rabbi here, but this year I see a lot more familiar faces in the crowd, so I'm doing my job, which is good. Good for us, good for the Jews. 0145, for those in the military, you know that that's not a time that normal people are awake, but nevertheless, 0145, and I jolted awake on my rack at Naval Air Station, Pensacola. It's my final duty day, and my colleague and friend Nick and I were headed to Eglin Air Force Base to accompany an Army unit, their logistics battalion, on a convoy operation in the swamps of southern Florida. Now, what a Navy chaplain was doing with the Army on an Air Force base, I couldn't tell you, but I want to speak about that a little bit this morning. Let me back up. So for those that don't know, this past June I was in Pensacola fulfilling my annual training as a Navy chaplain. And I, along with my friend and colleague Nick, who's a pastor outside of College Station, Texas, we were together for about 35 days on duty. And in that time, we were able to train, interact, connect, and most importantly, minister with soldiers, sailors, Marines, and aviators. For those of you that know my affinity for Top Gun, I loved hanging out with the aviators, and no, they would not let me fly with them in their F-18. I wish, but you know. It's okay, we all have dreams. Throughout our time, we were tasked with various environments where Navy chaplains serve. And where might we serve? To paraphrase Admiral Kerry Cash, the chaplain of the Marine Corps, who was, when I met him, was a captain at the time and in charge of our chaplain school. When he addressed our chaplain school class, he told us that we serve in all of the places that God tested the Israelites. In the wilderness, in the desert, on the water. That's where the Navy sends you. So during our time, we were in the air, we were on the sea, not too much desert, but we were in the wilderness with the Army. Normally, we would do our field ops with Marines on the green side, as they, so to speak, but the Marines at this base were only aviators, and as I mentioned, they wouldn't let us fly any of the fun stuff. But we were with the Army this time. The Army unit to which we were assigned was not just a regular infantry unit. It was the 2nd Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group out of Camp Bull Simon, some distance north of Eglin proper. We spent about a week with the battalion in the motor pool with the mechanics, attending jumps with the airborne guys. We spent some time with the tip of the spear with the Green Berets of 7th Group. We joined an operational detachment on one of their training days and brought them some treats for the range as they sharpened their skills together as a team. I'll share one of the more notable moments of this day was their team leader was a Jewish kid from Philadelphia, and he was about as surprised to see a Jewish chaplain as I was to see a Jewish Green Beret. Not many of them out there. When our time concluded with the Army, Nick and I returned to Pensacola to join our brothers and sisters back on the blue side for a couple weeks until we got a call from that 7th Group chaplain again, inviting us to join him on their convoy operation during our last day of training. The only kicker was we had to be there early. So, 0145, Lieutenant Burke is in his hatch, getting ready for the long drive from NAS Pensacola to Eglin Air Force Base to meet the convoy before they went out to the field. When we got there to their makeshift operating base, we helped the chefs prepare and serve some breakfast, offered some prayers of resilience, of safety, and mission success over the 2 convoys that were heading downrange, and just spent the morning with the soldiers that were getting ready for their day. I learned some valuable insights and lessons from my time with the Army and many simple strategies that they employed to ensure resilience. That is, the ability to bounce back after failure. Although we came from the Navy, and the Army guys reminded us of that constantly, some things are universally understood amongst those in uniform. The men and women of 2nd Battalion were laser focused on the immediate mission at hand. Where are they going? What is the objective? How do we get everybody there and back safely? They embodied the broader mission of the military, which is to kill people and break their stuff. It's the reality of it. And they understood that the resilience depended on adaptability. In the military, adaptability is key because whatever can go wrong usually does go wrong. That's Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong does go wrong. So when everything goes wrong, and it inevitably will, how does a unit adapt, overcome, and most importantly, when the mission is said and done, grow as individuals and members of a cohesive team? So at the end of each training evolution, the leadership from the squad level to the company review what's called an AAR, an after-action report, to discuss what went well, what went wrong, and what they learned from the process, and how they can be better, deadlier, and more efficient for the next time around. At times, the AAR process can be brutal, but they are an effective tool to ensure accountability for the decisions and the actions by the team. Not only that, they serve to keep the team sharp and humble and to improve for the next time around. What makes the military successful in their operations is this adaptability and mission focus. The mission is instilled by confident and invested leadership, or so we hope, but it is still incumbent on the individual to adopt, believe, and work towards fulfilling that mission. The resilience and capability of a unit depends on their focus and the way in which they deal with adversity. Being adaptable, developing processes of learning, of trial and error, and of non-complacency not only help accomplish the mission, but ensure that everybody comes home. It requires everyone in the unit to be able to answer the question, who am I, who are you, and what are we about? It requires the chaplains, the team leaders, the non-commissioned officers, and other members of the leadership team and the enlisted personnel to foster and maintain amongst their unit a sense of resiliency and an emphasis on growth while maintaining that ever so tender balance, sometimes tension, between constructive questioning and good order and discipline in the military. So, how might we take some of these lessons on morale and mindset and resilience to lay a foundation for ourselves that yields sustainable growth for our future endeavors? If our mission this new year is to become more spiritually fulfilled, more resilient, more learned, more physically, mentally, and emotionally fit, then how did our AAR, our after action report, read last year? In this upcoming year, how do we create an environment and adapt our mindset so that they reflect the growth we desire? Luckily, we have a model for this precise mindset, aptly named growth mindset. This term, along with fixed mindset, the opposite of growth mindset, was coined by Stanford professor and clinical psychologist Carol Dweck decades ago when she and her colleagues began to observe elementary school students' attitudes regarding failure. What they found was that some students bounced back from their failures, and some students were devastated by even the most minor difficulties. In an article entitled, "Praise for Intelligence Can Undermine Children's Motivation and Performance," Dweck and her colleague, Dr. Claudia Mueller, asserted that praising effort and process over intelligence and achievement increased performance and positively affected motivation. Their study offered students two forms of divergent feedback. One group got feedback based on intelligence, and the other got feedback based on effort. Intelligence feedback in this study was tied to labels of identity. You're smart, you're talented, adjectives describing the students themselves, whereas effort feedback was tied to verbs, what they're doing, how they're thinking, what decisions did they make, behavioral and cognitive choices that the children made in an effort to learn and get better. The findings? Those praised for intelligence cared more about performance goals relative to learning goals, were less persistent and more unhappy in their tasks, and most importantly, did not believe they could improve. When faced with failure, they fell apart. And this led them to more often choose an easier task to ensure successful completion over a harder task whose success was not guaranteed. By contrast, the opposite was true for those praised for effort. This group persisted in their tasks even when they become more challenging. They were less focused on achievement and more invested in the learning process. When faced with failure, this group viewed it as a tool for learning and growth, and a reminder of what not to do the next time around if they wanted a different result. Professor Dweck described these underlying attitudes about intelligence and ability through the lens of the growth mindset and a fixed mindset. When we believe that we are born with a set of skills, abilities, knowledge, beliefs that do not and cannot change, we would have a fixed mindset. If we have a fixed mindset, we tend to shy away from challenges for fear or failure of humiliation. We avoid these new experiences because they can and usually are frightening, and are less interested in receiving constructive feedback. However, when we believe that, with the right attention and effort, we can learn new skills, we can strengthen our beliefs, sharpen our abilities, and deepen our knowledge, we can become more wise and more capable with every new experience. We would have a growth mindset. With a growth mindset, we welcome challenges despite the possibility of failure because we understand the value in the process of learning and doing, and view failure not as a negative, but a tool to help our positive growth. Now, fixed and growth mindsets are not mutually exclusive, meaning in some areas we may have a fixed mindset, but in other areas we may have a growth mindset. We might have a growth mindset when pursuing our hobbies and our passions, where trial and error and tinkering with what works and what does not are all part of the fun and help us grow and hone our skills in that discipline that brings us so much joy and fulfillment. We may also have a growth mindset when it comes to our spiritual fitness, how we're connecting to Judaism, the things that we are doing to connect and engage with our Jewish identity, to others and to God. However, we may have a fixed mindset when it comes to other aspects of our life, such as our synagogue community and where we are going. If we choose to adopt a growth mindset for ourselves in this new year, so too should we adopt a growth mindset when it comes to our role in our synagogue community. Honoring our traditions and our purpose as a conservative synagogue does not mean that we are unable to adapt and innovate in our own way. What it does mean is that we should be reminded that we do not have an inherent right to exist as a synagogue, and that our mindset, attitude, and effort in this moment and looking towards the future is more consequential than cleaving to the past for its own sake. When we view change as an enemy, adaptability as a weakness, and failure as a barrier, we resign ourselves to a fixed mindset and subsequently fall back to that which we are comfortable, that is, the way that we've always done things. When we look to the bullet points of our mission statement, they are not written in the past tense. We want to work together to nurture, to step forward, and to cultivate a more active, engaged, and sustainable community. And through having the patience, the drive, and the knowledge that we can do better, we challenge ourselves to adopt a growth mindset in this area. We can embrace our traditions and understand the importance of adaptability when it comes to creating sustainable growth for future generations. Still, I hear the dreaded nostrum, we've always done it this way. But this statement reminds me that we are still growing and we are still learning, but we are not quite there yet. But operating in the yet is a very, very good place to be. The yet is a powerful force when it comes to developing and sustaining a growth mindset because it allows us to maximize our individual performance and development through teaching us the importance of intention and of patience. To have a growth mindset means to engage deeply in the yet. It forces us to slow down, to take a breath, and to savor the learning process, which in turn yields positive growth. In today's day and age, patience seems to be more and more challenging. In an information age where we are always looking for the next best thing or that instant gratification, we are consumed with what Professor Dweck calls the tyranny of the now. Meaning that we may favor immediate gratification of checking something off of our to-do list than waiting, playing it out, and engaging in a process. For cleaning up for Rosh Hashanah, which I'm sure many of us had, if you have toddlers running around like I do, you're cleaning up a lot, your house is full of clutter. But if we move clutter from our counter to our closet, we're not actually cleaning up. We're just putting things away to deal with later on. Similarly, in our experience and our endeavors, do we view them as learning processes that yield sustainable growth and development, or a chore to complete that yields a low-risk, high-probability success? Which of these two choices do you believe will lead to more long-term and durable fulfillment? In this new year, how do we build a bridge to yet within ourselves and within those around us. One of the strategies that another clinical psychologist, Dr. Becky Kennedy, asserts is the importance of praising wisely in the way that we give feedback to others and, more importantly, to ourselves. The way that we praise others and ourselves affect our effort and attention when we approach experiences, opportunities, and obstacles in our lives. So what does it mean to praise wisely? Similar to praising effort of the students in Dweck's aforementioned study, process praise focuses on giving praise and feedback based on the learning process and the subsequent growth, even if the conclusion of the endeavor resulted in a failure. Offering process praise and thoughtful feedback requires honesty, sometimes brutal honesty, with ourselves and those whom we wish to succeed. And not only that, it requires a mutual sense of support and patience. Moreover, it requires us to be judicious with our praise, intentional with our praise. I can praise my son Mason for building something with his bricks and engage his intellect and his decision making so that he values his work. But if I praise him every time with the same vigor each time he picks up a toy, my feedback carries less intention and may seem disingenuous. Through process praise, we can open ourselves up to the courage it takes to try, fail, and amend the process for the next time, and to the honesty and intention that is needed to encourage and sustain the growth we desire. To adopt a growth mindset means to acknowledge and embrace imperfection, to be brave and be patient, to pay attention to our words and our thoughts, to praise others and ourselves wisely and with intention, and most importantly, value the process and the people involved over the end result. To sustain a growth mindset means that we focus on the verbs. What are we doing and how are we doing it? Why are we doing it this way, and what outcome do we want to see? What are we telling ourselves when we fail or when we miss the mark? How are we compassionately and objectively evaluating ourselves in our own professional and personal lives? And most importantly, are we being too hard on ourselves when we identify areas that we want to grow? If we cannot identify verbs that we are proud of, perhaps it's time to reevaluate our mindset in those places. There are two things that we can control in our lives: our effort and our attention. How much effort are we giving, and what are we choosing to spend that effort on? And how much attention are we paying to things in our life that might not deserve that much emotional energy? We have the autonomy as individuals in the Torah as a guide to create the conditions where we can muster the motivation in the face of challenge to think about and overcome our errors and reframe our mindset when we are faced with the temptation of mediocrity and the threat of failure. In this new year, we should strive for excellence and use failure as a tool for learning and growth, and know that deciding to adopt and develop a growth mindset is rooted in the knowledge that we can improve. This is the central message of the High Holy Days. We can, we must, and we will improve. It's not easy to recognize and address our shortcomings, and sometimes, maybe more oftentimes we care to admit, we are tempted to blame others or the system or external forces for our misfortune, our failures, and our bad experiences. However, if we believe we have agency, we focus on what we can control, our effort and our attention. We can deeply improve ourselves through our mindset to reflect the growth that we so desire. So I charge us on this day and for the upcoming new year to internalize, adopt, and develop a growth mindset in some or more areas of our lives, to foster environments that emphasize the learning process over the end result, to embrace the yet, be patient as we navigate through this worthwhile and fulfilling path to sustainable, durable, and long-term growth. And most importantly, know that in this year, we can and we will do better. Shana Tova.